At our family reunion, my family kept laughing at my little online store. "How's your Etsy empire?" my cousin snickered. Then a TV producer pulled me aside with an offer I never expected. My family laughed at my little Etsy store at our reunion. Then a TV producer approached me with an offer that changed everything. Now they're trying to be supportive. I don't know how to feel about it. I'm Noelle, 43, female, divorced mom of 2 teens. At our last family reunion, my cousin mocked my Etsy shop in front of everyone. Minutes later, a TV producer who'd overheard the conversation pulled me aside with a surprising offer that changed my life. Now my family's acting like they always believed in me. I'm not sure what to do with that. "So, how's your Etsy empire coming along?" My cousin Mallory's voice was laced with syrupy sarcasm, just loud enough to draw the table's attention at the family reunion dinner. She didn't even look at me when she said it, just kept scrolling through her phone with a smug half-smile. I set my fork down, blinked slowly, and tried not to show the heat rising in my chest. Every eye was on me, my kids, my Uncle Ray, Mallory's husband Derek, and a few others whose names I barely remembered. The room was full of extended family, some I hadn't seen in years, but the vibe was unmistakably familiar. That old cocktail of subtle judgment, pity, and thinly veiled competition that always seemed to bubble to the surface when we were all under one roof. I managed a half-laugh. "It's doing fine. A few new things in the works." "Wow," she smirked. "Are you taking on any big clients lately? Celebs ordering custom napkins?" A few chuckles rolled down the table. I felt my 17-year-old daughter Nina shift beside me. She always knew when I was about to fold into myself. My son Devin, 15, was already scowling. Before I could find a polite way to brush her off, or lose it entirely, someone touched my shoulder. "Excuse me," said a voice I didn't recognize. I turned and saw a man in his late 40s, beard peppered with gray, soft flannel shirt, kind eyes. He looked vaguely familiar. I thought maybe he was a partner of someone from the family I hadn't met. "You're Noelle, right? I saw your embroidery set up out on the porch earlier," he said. "Did you make all those pieces?" Caught off guard, I nodded. "Yes, I did." He smiled wide. "They're absolutely stunning. I work as a producer for Southern Folkways. It's a series we do on PBS about Southern artisans and craftspeople. I'd love to talk to you about maybe featuring you and your work in an upcoming segment." The silence around the table was deafening. I think I muttered something like, "Oh. Sure. That'd be amazing," and he handed me his card and left with a polite nod. For the first time in years, the room didn't know what to do with me. The next morning, I took my coffee to the porch, still not believing the exchange from the night before. I replayed the words again and again in my head. "They're absolutely stunning. I'd love to talk to you about maybe featuring you." It didn't sound real. But Travis, his name, as printed on the card, was real. The production company was real. I googled them late into the night and found their website, their team bios, even the episode archives. It was all real. My daughter came out and sat beside me. "You know they were all just jealous, right?" I looked at her. "No one mocks what they're not a little scared of," she said. "You're actually doing something. They just post brunch photos and think they're influencers." Nina had a way of cutting straight through things. I had spent years brushing off their little digs. Being the only one who didn't graduate from a fancy program. The one who got married young, had kids, then watched her marriage crumble under the weight of compromise and unspoken resentment. When Dale left me, I didn't just lose a husband. I lost a version of myself I thought I was supposed to be. And then I started stitching. It started with small things, quotes, floral patterns. Then I incorporated stories from my grandmother, little bits of Appalachian folklore, poetry. My Etsy shop, Thread and Thorn, was born in a corner of my garage, next to dusty Halloween decorations and bins of old-school papers. It was never about becoming rich. It was about creating something that felt like mine. But that wasn't something my family ever seemed to value. they were all about appearances. Success was measured in income brackets and square footage. I was doing fine, but in the way you say someone's doing fine when you mean still struggling, bless her heart. So when Travis reached out again a week later, I said yes. The filming happened at my home in Asheville that fall. Travis and his team were respectful, curious, and warm. They spent 2 days filming me in my studio, asking me about each piece, where the stories came from, and how I taught myself. They talked to my kids, my neighbors, even visited the local crafts market where I sometimes did live demonstrations. Nina helped with lighting. Devin gave them a tour of the backyard garden I kept for natural dye plants. When the segment aired in January, my inbox exploded. Orders flooded in. Not just on Etsy, boutiques reached out. A folk art museum in Boone emailed me about doing an exhibit. Someone asked if I'd be willing to teach a short course on textile storytelling at their arts collective. And then, slowly, the family started reaching out. Mallory sent me an Instagram message. Saw the PBS thing, super cool. If you ever want help promoting, let me know. I do PR, remember? Cyrus tagged me in a Facebook post, proud of my cousin. Adrian emailed me a long message about how she always believed in the healing power of art and how it was so good to see someone pursuing their passion fearlessly. Each message tasted like a lukewarm apology, dressed up in pretty words. Not one of them acknowledged what had happened at the reunion. Not the laughter. Not the eye rolls. Not the years of subtle dismissal. And I didn't know what to do with that. Because on the one hand, I wanted to scream, where were you when I was drowning in doubt and debt? When I was barely keeping the lights on and you made jokes about handmade dish towels? And on the other hand, a part of me wanted their approval. That part of me I hated, the little girl version still trying to be enough for a family that had already written her off. I didn't reply to any of their messages. Not right away. I kept working. I hired my first assistant, a quiet, creative 22-year-old named Callie who was fresh out of art school. I started holding monthly workshops, some in person, some online. My kids helped me build a mailing list. My ex tried to play nice and dropped a casual congrats in a text when he saw the PBS episode. I didn't even bother responding. I was busy building something real. But at night, lying in bed, the messages from my cousins haunted me. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about forgiveness. It was about how people only seem to show up when it's safe to applaud you, when they're sure they won't look foolish for doing so. And I didn't know whether I should let them back in. I waited almost 2 months before replying to any of them. By then, I had filled so many orders I had to temporarily close the shop just to catch up. I'd been invited to speak on a panel at a regional crafts conference, and the Folk Art Museum in Boone confirmed they wanted to host my first exhibit that summer. A small publishing house reached out about possibly doing a photo book of my work combined with the stories I'd been stitching into the pieces. Things were moving fast, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was clinging to stability, I was steering. But there was this mental itch I couldn't scratch. Their messages sat in my inbox like unanswered questions. I kept thinking about the way they had looked at me at that reunion, like I was some quirky side character in the family narrative. The one who never quite measured up. And now that the same work they dismissed had gained some recognition, they were conveniently shifting their stance. Was that just how people worked? Maybe they were trying. Maybe I was being too proud. Maybe I was right to be cautious. I didn't know. Then Adrian sent a follow-up email. It was longer than the first. Less polished. More raw. Subject: I owe you an apology, Noelle. I've been meaning to write to you again, but I wasn't sure how to say what I really want to say. I watched your episode again with Dad, he loved it, by the way. Said it reminded him of Grandma sewing in the afternoons. I felt ashamed watching it. Not because of you. Because of me. I've been one of those people who thought success had a certain look. Certain job titles. Salaries. Degrees. I see now how narrow that was. You were building something all along, and I never saw it. That's on me. I'm proud of you. Truly. And I'm sorry for the times I laughed or didn't take it seriously. You deserved better. Adrian and I sat with that one for a long time. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that meant something. Mallory's message still grated. Her tone hadn't changed much. She wanted to get involved now that it might make her look good. She even tagged my shop in a few of her posts, supporting small businesses' yellow heart, like she hadn't once compared my life's work to potholders. Cyrus was less pushy. He sent a couple of polite check-ins and a link to a possible retail space in Asheville that he thought I might be interested in as a future workshop hub. But none of them had been there during the silent years. When I was hand-washing fabric at 2 a.m. because the washer broke and I couldn't afford a plumber. When my hands are cramped from stitching through pain. When Devin needed new shoes and I debated between that or buying supplies for a new commission I couldn't afford to turn down. They didn't see the work when it was quiet and ugly and unnoticed. So what did it mean when they wanted to be part of it now? I finally replied to Adrian. Not with a long message. Just a short, honest one. Thank you for saying that. It means more than you know. She replied almost immediately. Said she hoped we could talk more sometime, and I told her I'd like that. It was a small step, but it felt like one in the right direction. As for the others, I still hadn't decided. I wasn't ready. Then I got a phone call from my mom. We have a complicated relationship. She was quiet through my divorce, offered help but often with conditions. She loved me, but she also had a blueprint in her head for what a daughter's life should look like, and I deviated wildly from it. This time, though, her voice was gentler than usual. I saw the segment, she said. It made me cry. I wasn't sure what to say. You looked so strong. And happy. I am, I said, surprising myself a little. I really am. She was quiet for a beat. I think I spent a long time being scared for you, she said. And now I realize. Maybe you were scared, too. But you did it anyway. That's brave, Noelle. That one knocked the air out of me. For a long time, I'd convinced myself I didn't need validation from anyone, especially not family. But hearing those words from her, without prompting, was something I didn't know I'd been waiting for. Weeks passed. The shop stayed busy. I started mentoring 2 young women through a local arts program. I even got an invitation to submit to a national textile arts show in Santa Fe. Then, another family reunion came up. This time in Charleston, hosted by Adrian. I hadn't committed yet. Nina wanted to go, mostly to see her cousins, but I wasn't sure if I had the stomach for it. I imagined walking in again and seeing their polished smiles, wondering if the admiration this time would be real or just performative. If they'd ask about my work with genuine curiosity or treat it like a quirky blip that had overstayed its welcome. But I also imagined Adrian. Her email. The way she'd taken a real step toward accountability. And my mother, saying she was proud. I wasn't sure if I was ready to be around all of them again. I wasn't sure if I could take another backhanded comment disguised as curiosity. But maybe. Just maybe. This time, I'd walk in on my own terms. And if anyone asked how my little Etsy empire was doing, I'd tell them the truth, it's not little. It never was. I finally RSVP'd to the Charleston reunion, though I waited until the last possible day to respond. Adrian had sent out a big family group email with all the details, Airbnb arrangements, food sign-up lists, even an itinerary she had organized with the precision of a surgeon. I could tell she'd put real effort into it. That alone made me lean toward going. Still, I kept second-guessing myself. Part of me feared walking into the same old dynamics, where success was a performance, not a personal truth. But the other part of me, the part that had changed over the last year, felt sturdier. Not immune to criticism, but less fragile. My daughter reminded me of that the night before we left. You're not going there to prove anything, Nina said while packing. You're going because you can. That's different. We drove the 5 hours to Charleston with the windows down for most of the trip, stopping for boiled peanuts and iced tea at a roadside market that made Devin gag in the best possible way. He was in a mood the whole week leading up to the reunion, mostly because I made him leave his gaming laptop at home. But once we crossed the Ravenel Bridge into Charleston, the views softened all of us. The marshes shimmered like broken glass, and the air had that salty dampness that makes your skin feel both gross and alive. Adrian had rented a gorgeous old restored home just a few blocks from the Battery, high ceilings, crown molding, those wide, creaky floorboards that make you feel like you're stepping back in time. We arrived just after sunset on Friday, and most of the family was already gathered on the veranda with drinks. As soon as we stepped onto the porch, I saw her, Adrian. She smiled and came straight over to me. "You came," she said, then wrapped me in a hug. It was stiff for about 3 seconds before it softened. "I'm really glad you're here, Noelle," she said, and I believed her. I caught glimpses of the others, Cyrus talking with his wife near the bar cart, Aunt June holding court with a few of the second cousins. And then there was Mallory, leaning against the railing with a glass of wine and a bright white sundress that probably cost $300. She saw me and raised her eyebrows slightly but didn't move. Nina noticed too. "Don't worry," she whispered. "If she says one word, I'll accidentally spill sweet tea on her outfit." I snorted and squeezed her hand. Dinner that night was catered: shrimp and grits, collard greens, cornbread. Everyone mingled, and for the most part, it was pleasant. There were compliments on how big the kids had gotten, polite questions about Asheville, even a few well-meaning folks who asked if I was still doing that art thing. It wasn't perfect, but it was tolerable. Manageable. Then Mallory slid into the seat beside me on the porch swing after dessert. "You really blew up this year," she said, swirling her wine. I kept my face neutral. "It's been a good year. A lot of hard work." She nodded like she was trying to look thoughtful. "I meant what I said in that message, by the way. About helping with promotion. You've got a great brand voice. You just need more exposure." "I'm actually working with a small team already," I said, as politely as I could. "They've been really aligned with the vision." She hesitated, then smiled thinly. "Sure. I just figured. Family helping family, you know? That phrase. Family helping family. It was wrong. Because that help had never been offered when I needed it most. Not when I was scraping together grocery money or when I cried quietly in the bathroom because a customer ghosted me on a big order. Not when I begged the universe for one single sign that I wasn't completely wasting my life. They hadn't helped then. Now that the tide had turned, now they wanted in. But I kept my voice even. "I appreciate the offer. Really. But I think I need to do this on my own terms." Mallory didn't reply right away. Then she said, "You always were kind of stubborn." I smiled, for real this time. "Yeah. And it turns out that's working out pretty well for me." The next morning was a beach outing. I drove separately, and needed the headspace. Nina and Devin took off with some cousins as soon as we got to the beach, and I sat up under an umbrella with a wide-brimmed hat, a cold drink, and a paperback I knew I wouldn't actually read. Adrian came by after about an hour, barefoot and sandy. "I've been thinking about how we were in our 20s, she said, sitting beside me. "God, we were so certain of everything." "I wasn't," I said. She laughed. "I was. And I think that made me kind of a nightmare." I didn't say anything, but she glanced at me sideways. "I'm trying to be better," she added. "To see people for who they are, not who I expect them to be." "I can see that," I said. "I appreciate it." We sat there for a long time without talking, watching the waves break and the kids shout and splash in the surf. Later that evening, Cyrus pulled me aside in the kitchen while we were cleaning up after dinner. He looked tired, like work was wearing him down in ways he didn't want to admit. I heard you're thinking about expanding into a physical space, he said. I raised an eyebrow. I'm exploring it. He nodded slowly. I came across a spot in Asheville that might interest you. It's not on the market yet, but the owner's retiring. Small building, used to be a cafe. I thought of you. I didn't know how to respond at first. Was it just another performative gesture? But then he added, I don't want anything out of it. I regret not seeing what you were doing sooner. And I thought maybe this was a small way to make up for that. His voice was quiet. Uncertain. I didn't say yes. But I thanked him. And for the first time in years, it felt like maybe the family narrative was shifting, just a little. That night, Nina came to my room and collapsed face first into the bed. I love our cousins, she mumbled into the pillow. But they are so exhausting. I laughed. What happened now? Just so many questions about what I want to do, and then explaining what folklore studies are and watching their eyes glaze over. Welcome to the club, I said, patting her back. She rolled over to look at me. Do you ever feel like they don't actually want to understand us? Just label us and move on? All the time, I said. But you don't let it stop you, she said. That's what I love. I felt something in my throat tighten. It had taken so long to feel seen in my own life. And now here was my daughter, seeing all of it. The reunion had a final dinner scheduled for Sunday evening, more speeches, more toasts, maybe a slideshow if Aunt Doreen got her way. I hadn't decided if I was going to speak yet. People were already nudging me about it. And part of me wanted to. But I wasn't sure what I'd even say. Sunday evening arrived humid and slow, the Charleston sky a heavy canvas of pale peach and lavender. Inside the rented house, everyone buzzed with the kind of energy that comes when the weekend's almost over, tipsy and tired, slightly sentimental, and more open to conversation than they had been 2 days earlier. The final dinner was set up in the backyard under strings of globe lights and paper lanterns. The kids ran barefoot between tables, the adults clustered into conversational cliques, wine flowing as freely as the southern drawls. Adrian tapped her glass at the head table and stood. Before we all go our separate ways, I just wanted to say thank you all for coming. And thank you to the ancestors for giving us enough stories and drama to keep these reunions interesting. Laughter rippled across the yard. And, she continued, looking toward me, I think it would be great if Noelle could say a few words. A few people clapped. Most just turned and waited. I hadn't planned to speak. I wasn't sure I had anything to say that would matter. But Nina gave me a subtle nod from her seat. So I stood. I walked up to the little patch of lawn near the lanterns, heart thudding. Hi everyone, I began. I wasn't expecting to speak tonight, but I guess this year has been full of surprises, so why stop now? A few chuckles. I've been thinking a lot this weekend about who we become when no one's looking. About the things we build, not for applause, but because we need to build them. To survive. To heal. To make something of the pieces we're left with. I scanned the crowd. I saw Mallory, arms crossed. Cyrus, attentive. Adrian, open and waiting. When I first started my little shop, I was doing it in secret. After the divorce, I didn't know who I was anymore. I just knew that my hands needed something to do other than writing themselves. So I stitched. I created it. I sold things that made people feel something. I paused, choosing my next words carefully. And for years, it felt like nobody noticed. Or worse, they noticed and laughed. And I get it. A handmade craft business doesn't sound impressive at cocktail parties. It's not a Tesla. Or a condo in the city. But it was mine. It is mine. Nina had her phone out. I knew she was filming. And now, it's also a growing brand. A community. A platform for storytelling and empowerment. I've been featured on PBS. I've been invited to teach. People see value in the thing that was once a punchline. I didn't raise my voice, didn't gloat. But I let the truth settle on them like mist. And I guess what I want to say is this: be careful who you laugh at. Some of us are quietly building something incredible while you're too busy dismissing it. That got quiet. Real quiet. Then, from somewhere in the back, Uncle Ray let out a sharp laugh and clapped once. Others followed. The applause grew awkwardly, then stronger. Mallory clapped last, slow and mechanical. I smiled, genuine, not smug, and walked back to my seat. As I sat down, Nina whispered, "That was perfect." Later that night, Mallory cornered me in the hallway inside, near the powder room, away from the noise. "That was quite the speech," she said. I said what I needed to say. She opened her mouth like she might argue, but then her face changed. "You really meant all that, didn't you?" "I always have," I said, voice even. "Even when you were laughing." There was a pause. "I wasn't trying to be cruel," she said. "I just didn't think it would go anywhere." "I know. And I guess I'm kind of jealous." That stopped me. She looked tired. Honest. I followed every rule. College, corporate, networking, the whole thing. And I'm still barely keeping it together. You followed your own path, and now everyone's clapping for you. "They're not clapping because I followed my path," I said. "They're clapping because I didn't stop when they told me to turn back." She blinked. And then she nodded, once, and walked away. The next morning, we packed up early. Devin was already asleep in the back seat before we hit the interstate. Nina had her headphones in but wasn't listening to anything. I could tell because she kept glancing at me through the corner of her eye. "You okay?" she finally asked. I thought about it. Then I smiled. "Yeah. I really am." The GPS pointed us west, back toward the mountains, toward home. I didn't just leave Charleston with compliments or closure. I left with something better: clarity. My revenge wasn't loud or dramatic. It wasn't about getting even. It was about becoming undeniable. And they could either respect it now or keep choking on their surprise. Either way, I'd already won.